Hello, my name is Kate and welcome to Habits of a Modern Hippie. Now, this video is going to be a little different. As you can see, I'm a little bit further along than the rest of the video kind of shows, but life's been a little bit crazy lately and I just never got around to editing it. So I'm gonna go ahead and start out, and yes, this is still Canning 101. It's a little bit late in the season. Obviously, a lot of my canning is finished, which is totally fine, but I wanted to go ahead and talk a little bit how while normally canning only happens in the autumn, you can actually do it all year round. It's a really great way to keep whatever produce is fresh and in the market or the farmer's market, your grocery store, for all year round. Because whether it is citrus in the winter or squash in the autumn or any of this summer produce, you can go ahead and can. So I think this is a important video to kind of watch to preserve all of your food year round. This is everything, well, not quite everything. I have shared some of this that I have canned in the last couple of months for this winter from both my garden and the farmer's market and things like that I will be eating throughout the winter. So all of these guys, if I have the recipe up on my blog, I will link them all down below, but let's go ahead and jump into the video. So you might see me introduce myself a second time, but because it has been so long since I filmed the first one, I thought I would give you a little bit of an update before we start. Hello, my name is Kate and welcome to Habits of a Modern Hippie. Today I'm doing a very requested video, both on the blog, on Instagram, the whole shebang. Everybody always wants to know how I can my food. I have shelves of canned food, produce that I store from my garden and farmers markets when everything's in season, so I can eat it later. This is my corn salsa. We're doing another batch today and I'll be showing you how to can in this video. And then this video with the actual recipe will be going up later. It should be the one right after this one if you're seeing this now. I'll pop a link up in the corner and down below, but if you are here when this is first starting, go ahead and give it a thumbs up and subscribe already so you'll see a lot more content coming soon. However, I've always been a little wary of doing this video, mainly because canning is such a science. However, once you've got it down and you're not creating recipes of your own, which I have been doing because I've been canning, I got my canning pot when I believe it was like my 16th birthday because I'm a cool kid. Anyhow, it's quite a science, but once you have the hang of it, it's super easy to do. So I figured I will walk you through the whole process of water bath canning. And note, this is only water bath canning. I'm not doing a pressure cooker here or anything of the sort. And there will also be a blog post accompanying this, so if I'm talking too fast, you're like, what is happening? You can go ahead and click that link in the description below too. So first and foremost, when it comes to preserving food, and especially in the water bath method, pH, or I believe it's power of hydrogen, little p, big H, is super important. Lots of foods, based on what they're made out of, the recipe, etc., what you add to it, are either alkaline or acidic. And for water bath canning, you need acidity. There is a minimum of a 4.6 pH level, or you cannot can it. So you need an acidic pH in order to use the water bath canning method. Any of your recipes that you'll find in legitimate books, or if like your favorite online recipe creators who don't just like throw a recipe together but actually like test and know things, and when you're creating a canning recipe you actually have to use like pH test strips and all of that. But I'm not teaching you how to create your own recipes right now. I am just teaching you how to follow them and make it work. I follow a lot of recipes because obviously I don't create all my own. This corn recipe that you'll see later is definitely one of mine, which I'm a big fan of. But my 3 favorite canning books, there are tons out there, but the first one is Put 'em Up by Sherry Brooks Vinton, and I'll put all these links down below. Then we have the Preservation Society, Home Preserves by Camilla Wynn, and then this big old boy from Williams Sonoma, but The Art of Preserving. And all of these have really incredible recipes. I use quite a few of them, but get yourself some recipe books. I know you can find some really great ones online. Martha Stewart has some really great ones, but yes, these are necessary. So when it comes to recipes, the recipes that are really good for water bath canning are obviously acidic ones. And there are 3 different ways that recipes can be acidic enough to can. So first is the food is already acidic. A lot of berries, things like that. It's a really great way. That's why jams work really well in a water bath method. The second is adding acidity. So in lots of my different recipes, like this corn one that I will talk about, we add acidity in vinegar, but you can also add things like lemon juice. And then the last one is one of my favorites, but all about like pickles and whatnot, so fermenting. Essentially, when you ferment certain produce in a salt brine, it creates lactic acid. So once again, acid is the main component there, so a good thing. But now that we know what kinds of foods we can can in the water bath method, I will show you kind of what you need. So first things first, you need a canning pot. So you can either use a stock pot you have at home. You just want to make sure that when you put your jars in, you have at least 3 inches of space to put water over those jars. I use a specific canning pot that I absolutely love because it comes with handles, a really thick bottom. It's big enough to fit 8 jars in. It's great. And along with your pot, you can do one of 2 things. You can either use a canning rack. I highly recommend them because it makes everything so much easier. Once again, it has handles. You can lower it down, or you can use extra rings. So these canning rings, you can go ahead and stack on the bottom of your pot. You just don't want to put cans onto the base of your pot. You need to be able to have airflow all around those cans. Next, speaking of canning rings, you are going to need jars. So I use a few different sizes of jars, and there's so many different ones and so many different brands. The most popular brands are Kerr and Ball. I tend to prefer Ball. I just like how they feel a little bit better, but either ones work. We've got, so Ball also makes really fun kind of shapes. So this one is very geometric, but I usually use quarts, pints, and these cute itty bitty little jelly jars. So you've got your jars. And then you also need jar rings and lids. So you can reuse your jars and your rings, but you cannot reuse lids. So before you go canning, if you're using jars that you have already, you want to go out and buy straight lids. So we've got wide mouth and we've got regular mouth from Ball, but you can also buy packs if any of your rings have gone like rusty or anything like that. You want to replace those too. This is a pack of Kerr with wide mouth lids, and you want to make sure that your lids are BPA free. Just, that's a good for you. And then there are also, I got these from Walmart. There are universal metal lids as well. Sorry, I am boiling my cans back there, so that's what you're hearing. But they're universal lids as well that you can get. So there are a lot of different ways that you can acquire your jars and your lids and the rings that you'll need to can. Before we get to that boiling pot, the last little bit of tool that you'll need is a set of canning tools. Essentially, you can buy these one-on-one. You don't technically need all of them, but it's going to make your life so much easier, and you can get a set for very inexpensive. This one has canning tongs, absolutely necessary. You need a pair of these. And this is a 2-in-1 tool. It is a bubble wand, so you actually stick this down into your can and twirl the bubbles out, and then it has a magnet on top, so you can pick up your lids without transferring any of the bacteria on your hands, etc. And then last, this is a canning funnel. So it actually fits over both wide mouth and the regular mouth jars. You stick it over, and you can actually look and see here that it has
the Headspace. So we'll be talking about Headspace later.
We've got all the tools and materials we need to can. So now we're gonna go ahead and pay attention to this giant canning pot behind me. If you are using brand new cans, some people sanitize, some people don't. I tend to like to sanitize everything. When it comes to bacteria and canning, if you accidentally get any bacteria in that can, the food's gonna go bad. And you guys know how I feel about food waste. So we're gonna sanitize everything. In order to sanitize these jars, what we're doing is I put them all in the canner and brought it to a boil, so that is boiling now. Another reason why it's good to sanitize your jars beforehand is that you never want to put a hot recipe into a cold jar. So no matter what you're doing, you want to make sure that you're using hot jars all of the time. So might as well sanitize them as you're prepping. Okay, so vocab lesson when it comes to canning. Canning is all about headspace. So headspace is essentially the amount of air in between the top of your jar when the lid is on and where the food sits. For this particular recipe, I want about 1/2 inch of headspace, but some recipes call for about 1/4 inch and some all the way up to 3/4 of an inch. So I'm filling this up and I'm actually paying attention to the measurement on my jar funnel here. And that is one of the reasons why a jar funnel is so helpful. So instead of like having to measure anything, I just look down, say, yep, a little bit more can fit in here, and makes it way easier. So that is step one, is just filling up the jar. What I'm gonna do now is my sanitized little bubble wand. I wanna make sure there aren't any big air bubbles here, so I'm just popping that in, stirring it around, making sure there's no air bubbles hanging out in the bottom there. This seems pretty great. And I'm gonna use the opposite side of that, the magnet. Grab one of these lids and make sure that I'm not touching this. Fingers, bacteria, bad on the inside of those lids. If you did spill any liquid on the outside of that rim, I don't have any on this one. You are gonna wanna wipe that down with a very clean sanitary towel. We're gonna pop that down. And in order to get the magnet off, you just wanna twist. And then I'm gonna use a clean band and just very easily finger tighten it. You don't want to tighten too hard, but you do want to make sure the lid doesn't come off when they are being processed. So that is one down. So now that these are all packed and I've tightened the bands by hand, I'm popping them into my canner that is already preheated. It's not quite boiling yet because I just took these guys out. But I'm going to pack them in. You want to make sure that there is not a lot of space in there. So I know mine fits 8, so even if I only made 7, I would add an extra jar in so that they didn't move around or jar around. But I'm going to use my tongs and place them in. So we've got about 5 minutes left of those guys boiling over there, but I will show you on completed jars from 2 days ago what we're looking for. So after we have pulled these out and popped them down on somewhere they're not going to be disturbed, you want to make sure to wait about 24 hours and then check the seal. In order to check the seal, all you have to do is push on the top. When you push on the top should not move. It should feel very sturdy in place. And if you undo the jar ring, which you actually don't have to store it with, I just tend to like them because it gives it a little extra not slidey business. But you can't actually peel this up. So the way I open these when I want to eat them is just put a butter knife underneath and then kind of slam it down so it opens. But you know that you've done it correctly when there is no popping here when you press on it, and that is all good. So these will store, depending on what your jars say, between 12 to 18 months. I would check the type of jars you're using because it changes based on the type of seal inside that they use. But overall, I absolutely love these. I have some apple butter in there, still going from last year because I made so much. and they last for a really long time, and you avoid food waste in general. If you guys do have any more questions, you can either head over to my blog post and it's probably answered in there, and if not, you can pop them in the comment section below. If you did like this video, make sure to give it a big thumbs up, and if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button down below. And we will see you again soon. Bye!